Hi, my name is Audie Brooks. I'm from CFB Edmonton, and today I would like to talk about the press. The press is an exercise that typically takes a weighted implement, usually a barbell, from the shoulders to the overhead position. Somebody should practice the press because it is a good compound exercise that strengthens the traps, the shoulders, and the triceps. The press is an exercise that helps to improve shoulder function because it brings in both anterior, the front, and posterior aspects of the shoulder girdle. And in doing so, it helps to lower potential risks of injury in the shoulders because you're developing a good even strength around the shoulder girdle with the press. Now, when I teach the press to somebody who's new, I like to start with a weightless implement like a PVC pipe to get them into the correct start and finish positions and teach them correct bar path before bringing them to an empty barbell. So I'm going to demonstrate how I would teach the press to a beginner. We're going to start by obtaining the correct grip. The correct grip is one where the hands are just outside the shoulders and the forearm is vertical. It's important that the wrists are straight and you've taken a tight grip on the barbell. The rest of the body plays an important role in the start position. The legs should be straight, the glutes should be squeezed, the abs should be drawn in, the chest lifted, and the shoulders retracted. And in the start position, depending on shoulder flexibility, the bar will sit somewhere between underneath the chin to in front of the clavicle. Another very important feature of the start position is that the bar is over our center of gravity. If the bar is sitting forward slightly, this will create a moment arm in which we have to fight against in executing the exercise. So make sure to instruct that the bar is right against the body, wherever it ends up sitting in its start position, and not held in front of the body. Once somebody shows me and demonstrates the correct start position for the press, we then move to the overhead position and talk about the posture there. In the overhead position for the press, we want the arms fully extended with the elbows locked out. The bar should be sitting directly over the center of gravity, which is over the top of the head, and we must maintain a neutral position in the back, hips, and knees. Once somebody has established a good overhead position, we then return to the start position. The next step is to talk about the bar path from start to finish. The crucial element to this component is moving the bar in a straight line over our center of gravity, which, if somebody was to try to perform this without moving their chin out of the way, would end up catching themselves under the chin. So the instruction is to tuck the chin back and move the bar as close to the face as possible as we move past the head to the overhead position. So from the side, it'll look something like this. The chin tucks back, the bar is pressed close to the face, and once we've passed the chin, the head moves under the bar in a neutral position as we finish with the overhead position. Getting somebody used to moving their head back out of the way and then back to a neutral position is important because it prevents the bar from traveling forward as a part of the movement. After a few practice repetitions where we're moving the head back, pushing the bar close to the face and finishing the correct overhead position, the participant is ready to try a press with the empty barbell. All right, when somebody is ready to try a press with an empty barbell, it's important that they understand how to set up the rack for a press. The important feature here is that we want the barbell high enough that they don't have to perform a deep squat to stand the barbell out of the rack, and we don't want it so high that they have to get their bar out of the rack by getting on their tiptoes. The correct height for the barbell in the rack should be just underneath the shoulder and can be measured by standing against the barbell and seeing how high the barbell comes in relation to the body. So once we've got the barbell set just underneath the shoulder, we can talk about how to approach the bar for a press. It's important that we get ourselves in the correct start position out of the rack, which means we're never going to take the bar out of the rack and bring it to us. We're always going to approach the bar by stepping towards it in the rack. So step one is to obtain the grip. The same grip we've identified on the dowel will now transfer over to the barbell. So again, a shoulder width grip approximately, where forearms are vertical. A tip that I have in taking the barbell or taking the grip on the barbell is to put the barbell deep in the palm. What I mean by that is the barbell should sit deep in the palm here as opposed to here. This will prevent the wrist from cocking back too far if the bar is too far in the top of the hand. If it's down lower here, then it sits more in line with the wrist, and the wrist is able to stay a lot straighter. So when you take your grip on the bar, grab the bar where the barbell is crossing here on the hand, and take a nice tight grip to firmly place it where it should be in the hand. At that point, you can walk towards the bar, rolling your elbows under the bar, so that when you pick the barbell up with your legs, it's in the correct position and you're engaged in the start position. So I'm going to demonstrate how to take the barbell out of the rack for a press. Okay, I measure my grip. I adjust the barbell low in the hand and I squeeze tightly. I'm going to step forward to the start position and then use my legs to stand the barbell out and take one step back. At this point, I'm going to straighten my legs, squeeze my glutes, draw in my abs, lift my chest, retract my shoulders, and perform a press. Chin back, press close to the nose, extend over the top of the head, and return back to the start position. I'll do 5 repetitions. On the return, it's important to lower the barbell back down to the start position so you have control over it, and then walk it into the rack. The rack has a design where you can rest the bar on the back plates first while sliding it down into the J-hooks, just ensuring that you always catch the little cups that are set to hold the rack. So at this point, we're going to bring in another element of technique, and that's a breathing technique that is crucial for performing progressively heavier loads. The breathing technique for most compound barbell lifts is to breathe in at the start position, hold the breath while creating a lot of tension in your torso and core, and then holding the breath as you perform the exercise. This ensures that we don't lose tension or stability in the core and torso. We can focus on maintaining rigidity through the stabilizing muscles as we press. To exhale could cause the system to relax, and we could lose balance, stability, and position in doing so. So we're going to be taking a breath in our start position, performing a full repetition before exhaling, and then recovering for the next repetition. Okay, so here's a demonstration of what a few reps looks like with the correct breathing pattern. I'm going to take a breath in, trap the air and squeeze my muscles, and then exhale here, where I pause for a few seconds to recover, and then breathe in again before my next rep. Again, breathe in, hold and squeeze, and rack. All right, the next thing I'd like to talk about is some warm-up considerations for the press. This is exceptionally important when it comes to beginners learning the press, because a lot of what can be done in the warm-up is practicing the technique of the exercise with no to light weight. So my warm-up recommendations typically are to perform a general warm-up, which would be something simple like riding a bike, rowing, going for a light jog. This helps to increase the core temperature of the body, increase blood flow, increase lubrication in the joints, etc. This general warm-up will help somebody become more prepared for the exercise. In addition to a general warm-up, a specific warm-up is important. This is where using a PVC pipe, a dowel, and performing some weightless presses while practicing good position, bar path, etc. is important. This can be sufficient for a good warm-up prior to practicing the weighted variation. However, there could be a few extra things you could do, especially for somebody who is having problems with flexibility or stability. Some of the things you can do is help to wake up or contract some of the posterior parts of the shoulder girdle, which is typically the aspects that are weaker or somebody is unaware of how to contract correctly. An exercise that is handy for this is a banded face pull. I'll demonstrate that now. The banded face pull is using a light band. In this case I have a red stretch band. You're going to take about a shoulder width grip, back up slightly so there's a slight stretch on the band. The idea is to elevate the elbows to approximately shoulder height and then pull the band towards the forehead, pulling the band towards the forehead as well as pulling the band apart. Extending fully, retracting the shoulders, externally rotating the upper arm, and then pulling the band apart at the top to create that tension in the shoulder. An exercise like this you want to perform for higher repetitions, for example 10 to 20 reps, so you can start to feel a light burn in the back of the shoulders. This will help bring blood to the muscles, will help wake up or innervate those muscles to the point where you can feel them a lot more in the start position of a press. Additionally, you can perform some light stretches in some of the muscles that tend to be tight. I had mentioned things like tight lats or tight pecs, so performing the lat pull stretch, this one here, and the pec stretch here will also be a good idea during a warm-up for the press. And then finally, for somebody who is experienced with the press and starting to reach higher levels of performances and weight on the bar, the important thing is to ensure that you're going from lightweight or empty barbell to your working set in several jumps. Usually 3 or 4 sets of sub-maximal repetitions to bridge the gap between empty barbell and your working sets is important to perform prior to your working sets. You wouldn't want to go from an empty barbell to your working set, as it's better to bridge that gap with some lighter weights to prepare you for the working sets for that day. All right, next we're going to talk about some common faults you see on the press. One of the common faults is a poor start position. Often this is because the person doesn't understand the role that the rest of the body plays in the press. So they'll be holding a light barbell or weightless implement in the correct start position here, but lack some of the tension in the rest of the body. It's important to cue things like squeeze the glutes and the legs, pull the abs in tight, lift the chest and retract the shoulders so that we create a foundation to press off of. If we were relaxed and pressing, we wouldn't have a strong foundation to press off of, and variations in the movement are a lot more prevalent. So the correction typically with somebody who is relaxed in their start position is to cue individual muscles to squeeze prior to pressing. Another common fault in the press is a poor overhead position. This often looks like this, and I'm going to demonstrate with my dowel. Often people will struggle to have the bar over their center of gravity, like this, and will have the bar sitting forward like this. They don't have the awareness of what overhead position is, and often have inflexibility in their lat and shoulder girdle, preventing them from being able to extend the shoulder to a full position. This needs to be corrected first prior to moving on to the weighted variation, because adding weight to an already poor overhead position can just exaggerate the problem. All right? So my fix for poor overhead position typically is a combination of correcting the chest and the abs and correcting the extension of the shoulder. For example, somebody's here, I will cue them to keep the chest down and the abs tight, and then pull the bar back this way as far as they can. If they're tight in the shoulders, this itself will be an excellent exercise to help work the back of the shoulder girdle, which is usually in this case weak, and stretch out some of the shoulders, which is typically tight. Another thing you can do with this fault is stretch out the lats and pecs, gaining some flexibility to make it a bit easier for that correction. A couple of stretches you can use with a dowel are a flagpole stretch, which would look like this, by placing the hands together and the arms straight, dropping the head through the arms and stretching the lats here. Holding that stretch for 30 seconds to a minute will help to relax and extend the lats. Another stretch, which is common and useful, is a dowel pass-through, which by taking a nice wide grip on the dowel and bringing it up over the top of the head and back, widening the grip as much as necessary to feel a stretch without being uncomfortable, is another good stretch to stretch the pecs and shoulders. So a combination of correcting their position and stretching out some of the tight muscles is a good approach to correcting that fault. Wrist position, as we talked about when obtaining the correct grip, is really important. Often somebody will obtain the correct wrist position in the start, but then allow the barbell to roll back in their hand, causing a bent wrist position. This is corrected by simply cueing the person to tighten their grip or potentially push the knuckles to the roof. I prefer tighten the grip, as pushing the knuckles to the roof could cause somebody to overflex their wrist, making it difficult to hold on to. Squeezing tight on the bar with the hands almost universally straightens the wrist. Readjusting the bar to the bottom portion of the palm is also important to correct this fault. Bar path. When performing the press, even a few inches forward can create a lot of problems as the weight gets heavier. We want the bar to stay over the center of gravity, which means we need to keep it as close to the face as we can as we press the bar. If the participant is moving the bar forward during the press, a cue I would use to correct that would be to aim for the nose so that the person is aware of where to push the barbell, which is directly up as opposed to forward. And then finally, another common fault would be overarching the low back, which actually plays into our tight shoulder in the overhead position. When somebody is incapable of extending the shoulder due to shoulder inflexibility or core weakness, there's often a compensation in the low back. So you can see here my low back. If I overarch my low back, it allows me to bring my arms, which haven't changed angle here, more in line with my center of gravity. This is unfortunately going to cause extra stress in the low back. It's something you want to avoid. If you find somebody is pressing the bar and reaching a balanced position overhead, however their back is overarched to achieve that position, the cue there is similar to the cue in trying to extend the shoulder back. Dropping the chest, contracting the abs, and pulling the shoulders back with an empty dowel or an empty bar, a weightless implement like a dowel will help stretch that position and force you to be stronger here. You can also do things like plank holds and other various abdominal strengthening exercises to help somebody feel what it feels like to contract the abdominals so that they can better set that up for stability in their overhead position. If someone cannot press overhead because of a previous shoulder injury that's been healed but left a lot of scar tissue, or possibly a deformation in the shoulder preventing from good overhead mechanics, there are still some other options for somebody who wants to strengthen the upper body. My suggestion typically is for somebody to use a bench press as their primary upper body strengthening tool, in addition to some other exercise for the posterior shoulder girdle. The bench press is an excellent exercise to strengthen pecs, the anterior shoulders, and the triceps, and exercises like a bent over row is a good exercise to strengthen the posterior aspects like the back of the shoulder, rhomboids, traps, and lats. Other alternatives for pressing could be a seated press, where somebody has got a slight an incline to the position, preventing them from having to reach the overhead position completely. And these are tools that somebody would use if they are just incapable of performing the overhead press properly.